So welcome back, folks. I'm Sean with Max Norman. We had a little Zoom issue, but that's fine. We're back now. The question was before we lost that was I said an album that describes Max Norman. You said Wicked Sensation. You explained, the cost of it. You said the first two Ozzy albums, but then you said something that was interesting. You said depending upon the time would be the album that you would choose.
Yeah, everybody I think goes through changes and evolves, and the Ozzy Osbourne, the Blizzard of Oz record, was very soon after I'd actually gone into the studio. Before that, I was a live engineer and had been on the road for about 7 years. So that was very early on chops, if you like. So. But I was already well groomed in microphone techniques and miking up drum kits in particular, and so I knew how to do all that, and I knew what I wanted to hear. So though the early Aussie records are really demonstrate my technique as I was coming off of live sound, if you like, and changed more over the years as you start to do more and more production. You do more and more records. You know, things change over the years, and obviously as more and more equipment changed. And for instance, somebody was asking, why is Diary of a Madman so different from Blizzard of Oz? And part of the reason is because we had some better gadgets, actually. We had a Lexicon 224, which we didn't have on the first record, a digital reverb. We had an AMS, which had more memory in that time. And even in those days, it was difficult to get a digital delay that had more than about 300 or 400 milliseconds because memory was so expensive. So, all of these things make a difference. You get, it's like giving Jimi Hendrix a wah-wah pedal. You give him a whole new room full of stuff that he can do, because you give him one thing and it fires off his imagination. And it's very much the same for myself. If we get a new studio gadget, you're like, oh yeah, this is cool. And you get, and of course you try and use it on everything. And it doesn't work on anything except for maybe one thing. And then, that's all of a sudden that's the hit. And you go, oh, yeah, I'm glad I used it on that, But it's very much, how well you do and what you do is very much down to when you did it. And so the Blizzard of Oz, for instance, very minimalist record as far as effects and tricks and audio stuff. I mean, it's just basically what the band sounds like, as well as I could possibly get it. And then with Diary of a Madman, we had more bits and pieces to play around with, and we got a little better. Randy's chops were better, my chops were better, the band's chops were better, the songs were were more complex, the arrangements a little more complex, and so everything evolves. Nobody's going to make the same record twice, and that's the way it happens. So then I could say, well, I really liked Grim Reaper, for instance, in the way that came about, and that was probably like 85, 86. So that was different set of chops with that record, and a different way of EQ stuff and a different way of hearing stuff. So it's a difficult question when you say, what do you think is the Max Norman sound? Because there really isn't one. It's just what the best you could do at that particular time, coupled with the fact that maybe you just got this new gadget and you're going to try and use it on everything. And, couple that to the fact that actually you don't like the way any of it's sounding, but you're doing the best you can, and you're not even sure if the song is any good anymore, and all this kind of stuff. So it's literally different on every record, and it's literally different from month to month. So I don't know if there's a great answer to that, but but certainly those records were to me. I couldn't. I don't see any way of getting them better now, and I'm a great believer in uh, letting letting things go. That's the way it was. Yeah, I could go back and make some parts of that better, but would it make a better record? No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't make any difference. It's the occasion and the whole the take at the time that contains all this extra information that nobody really understands. That the interplay between Jimmy Page and and Robert Plant. That they happen to do one night. They would never do it the same again. I mean, these are things that uh, in those days it was caught and you could never catch it again. You could never reproduce it. It just wasn't possible. Now it's almost the reverse. People are trying to reproduce exactly the same thing but slightly better all the time, and so it's a totally different. It's like looking down the telescope from the other end, if you know what I mean. It was very difficult, and I kind of digressed a little bit there, but it's very difficult for people to just take it as it is. And I'm starting to see a bit of a backlash against that now. And people are starting to go, oh, I really like the 80s sound or the late 70s sound and this kind of thing. And what they don't realize is it sounds like that because it was a bit crappy then. It's not. It's like, oh, I want this plugin to give me this sound. Well, just use a shit mic, and use a bad tape recorder, and you'll be there. But that people misconstrue. They think that they think that a preamp. I had some guy actually, a good friend of mine. He said, "Oh, dude, what preamps did you use on for that? Especially that drop of what preamps did you use on the drums?" I said, "Oh, we didn't have any preamps. I just used the SSL 4000 preamps. Oh, you got to be kidding. Well, what compressors? I didn't use any compressors. I didn't use any. I turned it down so it wasn't distorting. That's pretty much it. And mostly those records is careful equalization, and there's no compression on the drums whatsoever. Wow. I don't use compression on the drums, and I didn't use compression on the drums for many years after that. And I never found that it was. I always found that it was detrimental to the sound. And nowadays, it's like, oh, you have to use a drum compressor, you have to use a snare compressor, you have to use this. No, you don't. You really don't. If it's recorded properly, and if your mic is in the right place and you equalize properly, then you really don't need to use like lots of compressors. I think the only things that were compressed on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman may have been an SSL 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 compressor on the rhythm guitars, and only just hitting the top 1 or 2 dB. Very, very, very much. I'm not a big fan of compression. Well, I wasn't then. I'm more of a fan of it now because there's more people are using compression, so it's a bit more of a kind of a thing. But on those records, I would try as much as possible not to use any compression really, and just get basically what it is right onto tape, and and of course it's all analog in those days, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but analog is good at hiding some of the stuff, and it's also good at getting very dull after you run the tape past the head 60 times. And there are pros and cons about all of this stuff, and being able to choose which one is the best, you have to bear in mind what era it was done in, because it makes so much difference. The equipment and the medium that you're using to record, and the time that you have to record, and the modus operandi of everything is very different from year to year, and it's even changing now from year to year. So
Well, and I found a funny quote. I don't know how true it is or not, but about Blizzard of Oz, that Sharon Osbourne said it was her most enjoyable experience in a studio ever. I don't know if that I don't know if that's true or not, but that was out there.
Well, that's possible. I mean, the thing is, in those days, you know, when she would only come in. I don't know if she was there for tracking. Uh, I don't remember her coming down until maybe towards the end of the record, and so it may have nothing to do with the studio. She enjoyed, beating on Ozzy or whatever the hell. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't recall her being in the studio that much, especially on the first record. It's possible she was in there a little bit here and there, but mostly it was just myself and whoever was doing the overdub, or the whole band. If we were doing the whole band. So yeah, I don't Shazzy. I don't
I'd be
Shazzy.
interested. I'd be interested, Max, to get your take on. I'll call it the tail end of the '80s, where things seem to get really, I guess, more complex in terms of production and engineering, and albums are taking 3 and 4 years to be made, and it goes from, I don't want to say basic, because everybody knows if you're in a recording studio, it's never basic. It can be pretty difficult, but it just seemed like albums got very, very in depth in terms of the production towards the end of the '80s, and one album comes out and the rest of them follow suit. Just interested to get your thoughts on that and what you thought about when it was taking place.
Yeah. Well, the thing at the end of the '80s, the record companies were still active, and A&R people, more notably, were still active. And the great legacy of A&R people is that once you have a hit, you got to make another one just the same. And so you tend to have. I'll give you a great example of an A&R. You Really Got Me by the Kinks, a huge hit in England. Uh, All Day and All of the Night, which is the next Kinks single, is an obvious A&R play. The riff is almost exactly the same. It's the whole stop-start riff, da-da-da-da-da, but with all that is ba-da, ba-da, ba-da-da-da-da. So it's a minor third kind of deal, heavy kind of thing, but still pop, and the second song was obviously requested by A&R guys. You got to have a song just like this because this was huge. We need another one just like this. And if you look at lots of artists, you'll find that there's another song that comes out right after the main, the big hit, and it kind of sounds like the hit, but it's not, not the same. And some of them work, some of them don't. So um, A&R was still playing a big part of stuff. I remember when we were doing, I think we were doing Friction with Coney Hatch up at the studio, and Pyromania came out. So I immediately got a call the same day from the record company. Dude, have you heard Pyromania? And I'd be like, yeah, we did actually listen to it all last night with our mouths hanging open. And so immediately I get the call. Oh, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm obviously not going to put out Pyromania because it's already out, isn't it? So, but there was definitely influence from the record companies, and they're paying the bill. So you have to, you have to give them a certain amount of, time of day. So, you can blame to a certain extent whoever comes out and is really big and has a complicated record. You can blame them because goes back through the A&R guys, and then everybody else has to make a complicated record. It's very much like when Steely Dan came out with albums like Asia, and songs like Big Black Cow, and these, you know, these kind of very simplistic sounding, perfectly recorded, but actually very complicated musically songs. You can blame Steely Dan for a whole, you know, raft of other people that came afterwards that thought if it just sounds like this, then it's going to be huge. Because people went, oh my God, listen to the way, listen how good this sounds. Listen how all the separation on all the instruments, how carefully recorded it is, regardless of the fact that it was probably some of the best guys in audio making those records. But people mistook that for oh, all we got to do is make it with this kind of all this separation and do all this stuff, and we'll have a great record. Well, of course, it's not that simple, and the reason Steely Dan was great is, at the end of the day, is not because it was recorded so well. They're great because they wrote great songs, and the arrangements are fantastic, and the playing is fantastic, and the performances are, you know, unbelievable performances. So, but people thought, a lot of people thought, oh, you know what? If I make it sound like this, the same as Pink Floyd, a lot of these people, same as Crime of the Century, Supertramp, for instance, you know, these very well recorded records, all of a sudden people took that as, oh, this is what I got to do. So records got more and more complicated, and like as you say, towards, you know, as it got into the 90s, and there were more tracks available, you know, 48 tracks instead of 24 tracks, or 2 48 track Sonys, or if you wanted to get nuts, or, you know, but there were more and more tracks available. We used to use 2 24 tracks, and we would lock them up with synchronizers and stuff like that. And that was a lot of the work in the 80s was done like that. Michael Jackson, these kind of guys were using 5 or 6 different clones of the master, and they would work in different studios all the time. They send a clone over and have the guy do percussion on one. You'd have somebody working on backing vocals on the other, you know. So things, the technology got more complex, and I probably blame this. I blame the complexity of the music and the productions on once again on the toys that were available. So there are more toys available, people are going to use them, especially like boffin guys like me, you know, in the studio. Oh, look at this, we got to use this, even if it doesn't make any difference. We're still going to use it because so that we can say, oh yeah, we use that, you know, or we try, you know. But essentially, it's a good thing. You want to try everything, and but also they were also keeping stuff that they probably should have erased. You see, but they kept it because they had enough tracks, and then was like, oh, mistake number one, you know. I kind of blame really technology and the advancement of recording, of the recording technology, for a lot of this, because people wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. And as you know, like Mick Jagger says with the 4 track, you know, if you can make something good on a 4 track, then you don't need all this technology. And unfortunately, technology now is taking over from good songwriting, and you know, it just, people think that if they throw enough shit at it, and they got like all this, you know, all this stuff going on, that it's a great record now. And you know, there's a lot of even in metal, there's a lot of bands like that now with the symphonic metal. You know,
Yep.
There's just a shitload of stuff on there, maybe 100 tracks, and they got 8 different keyboards and 5 different guitar tracks, and you know, blah, you know, it's just over the top stuff. And you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a lot more complex now because it can be, I think. You know, I'm doing this because I can, you know.
During COVID, I did the whole geeky thing. You couldn't do anything. I was going on YouTube and finding isolated tracks of things that were recorded. And being a drummer, I kind of geeked out on some of that stuff. And you hear some of those old tracks that made albums that had little flubs, but they were like magic, right? That's really what made the song and set up the groove. You hear some of the stuff that's out now, and the drums are almost so precise. Yeah, humans playing it, but they're all pro tooled up. And um, the yin and the yang. Is there a preference for you?
You know, everything in moderation. For instance, I've been tuning vocals for many years before auto tune. And that's a interesting case because apart from the fact that the auto tune became an effect that rappers use and R&B kind of effect, there is a case for having it as a sort of hidden enhancement, if you like, and that can be done well, and it can be overdone, of course. I learned earlier on that an in-tune vocal has more listenability, and you can listen to the track longer, usually, but not always. I think that, like you say, it's yin and yang, and really the course is to try and steer down the middle, and not to go too far to one extreme or to the other extreme. And the way that I approached vocal tuning, for instance, was in a way that it made me free to keep a vocal take that I thought had intrinsic magic to it, and anything that later on, it gave me the freedom to say, yeah, keeping it, and later on, I could listen to it and go, yeah, that one note is starting to bug me. And then I might go back and just nudge that note and go, yeah, that's a little better. And not auto tuning the whole thing, but pushing here and there, just tweaking here and there. After a while, after you listen to it many times, and you go, you know what, that one thing is now bugging me. And that's an interesting thing too, is that I think if you listen to people like Mutt Lange, there's nothing wrong with those records. This guy has listened to this record long enough that he's found anything that you might, he's listened to it 400 times. And it's only the 400th time where he goes, oh, that's fucked up, I'm going to fix it. The other 399 times, he didn't hear that yet. And we're not going to listen to it that many times. So we never get to hear it. But he gets to the point where he hears it and he goes, okay, I'm just going to fix that one last little thing. I'm just going to last little. Of course you can keep going, but the important thing is to recognize when something just works and doesn't need fucking around with. And that's part of production too, is when not to mess around with something, when to leave it and when not to leave it, when to erase it and when to go, yeah, I like that, let's move on, And I think, unfortunately, those choices now are way too easy to make, and they're reversible. So they're not really choices. And this is a problem. Make the choice, move on, get it done. Because otherwise you'll just be going for months and months and months. You'd be like, oh, I'm not sure about this, I'm not sure about this. And it just devolves into a bunch of bullshit. And you could have made 3 albums instead of making one. So, just get on with it, put it down. Remember that probably the first or second time you play it correctly is the only time it's going to be any good. After that, it's probably not. It's going to sound stilted or boring, or you're not going to have any fire in the playing or the singing, the performance. So, the thing is, put it down, move on. That's actually, I think, one of the reasons that popular bands now are all cover bands, because people go out and they like to see live music. And they like the feel of the live music because they've got all these guys playing together and they're hearing songs that they like. And so now they have the best of all worlds. They hear the songs they like. They play them the same as they like instead of changing them, because the artists that play them normally are so pissed off with playing them, they always want to change them, do them at halftime, or, oh, I'm going to change this because I'm sang it 80, 100 times. But cover bands, they play it exactly the same. They play it right, but they play it live. And so you've got the best of all worlds here. You've got great players, you've got great songs, you've got a live feel where the interaction is 100%. Everybody's playing live, well, unless they're using a bunch of bullshit, but playing live. And that, to me, explains it. Goes a long way to explaining why cover bands now are the most popular thing out there. And it makes sense to me. people don't want to spend $150 to go see the band. You know, they go see the band. The band doesn't play half of the stuff they want. What they do play, they play it different. You know, that's not what people want. People want to hear it the way they know it is. You know, so things get more complicated, then they get simpler. You know, and then things get super arranged, like Pink Floyd or some of these bands, and then somebody comes out, like Billie Eilish, just does a very straightforward song, and everybody goes, "Oh fuck, I can't do all that shit anymore. You got to do it like this. You got to, do it in one take, just an acoustic, and it's got to be attitude." No, none of these things are correct. All of everything's different, but it's all in moderation. You shouldn't do everything by the book. You shouldn't do everything on the beat. You shouldn't do, but you shouldn't do nothing on the beat. You shouldn't, I mean, I've been to sessions with some people who should be nameless, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, listen to that, man. Listen to how it's grooving," and it's been awful. And I've been sitting there going, "This doesn't groove at all. It's loose as fuck. Nobody's playing on the beat. It's all over the place." But some people go, "Oh yeah, listen to how loose it is. Isn't that cool?" And I'm like, "No, it's not cool. It's fucking loose. Tighten it up, baby." But you know what I mean? Nothing is right. Nothing is wrong. There's only sort of gray areas in between. So to me, it's moderation. And nothing compares with having a great set of players that are into it and fresh, and everything sounds good. And they come out there and you go, "Right, hit it," and they just rip this thing out. They're well rehearsed. They know how to play it. They're looking at each other. They're having fun. They're really enjoying it, and that just comes over. That comes over better than anything I can ever do. It doesn't matter if the tom's in tune. Doesn't matter if the snare's flat. Doesn't matter if if the bass is too basic. None of that shit matters once you get the magic generating. Then all this stuff is secondary, and you can go back and go, okay, when you're mixing, you go, okay, yeah, bit too basic, take a little bit of that off. But everything gets a lot easier when it's all hanging together. And right now, for the most part, I think the way everybody records is bit by bit, and right. This is a detraction from real music. And even the guys from Juilliard or the big colleges will tell you, look, it's much better when everybody plays together. You don't see orchestras going out there with a tape recorder playing back the kettle drums, or you don't see them using tape loops or anything like that. You see 80 people on stage playing together, listening to each other, and that's what creates this kind of inherent magic. And that unfortunately is very lacking these days, except for cover bands. And cover bands rehearse and play all the time, and they're very enjoyable for the most part. So
that's a great quote. I love that, because a lot of people shit on cover bands, and a friend of mine has a theory that to be in a cover band, you got to play a lot of different artists well, as opposed to just yourself, right? Question I have for you, and you said shall remain nameless, and I won't ask you to name names, but your job is to get that album. Your job is to get it, as perfect as you possibly can and enjoyable, and have the record company like it. Have you been on a session, or you've been recording something? Maybe it's a singer, a guitar player, drummer, whatever, and you're going, "There's no way this person's ever pulling this off after we get off the studio if they got to go out and play." But go with God, and away you go. Have you ever run into that?
Yeah, well, you try not to get in that position. So you try not to accept projects that might be dubious like that. Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't been in that position too much. Maybe once or twice. We got in a position doing Soldier of Fortune with Loudness that Mickey just did not have really any vocals ready, and it was kind of a bit of an awkward situation. And the band replaced him with an American singer. But I try not to. I've been very careful not to get into those kind of situations, because I've been lucky enough to be able to pick what I think is going to be a good project. So if I suspect, like I turned down Motley Crue, so and that was that was probably the wrong move, but I got the original cassette with the 5 songs on it, Smoking in the Boys' Room and the other ones. And I thought they were pretty crappy. And they are a pretty crappy band, actually. I mean, apart from, the drummer's pretty good. But I turned that down. Of course, later on, I'm looking at it thinking, well, I shouldn't have turned that down because they made a huge amount of money. But I kind of wasn't bummed out that I turned it down because they're not particularly, I didn't think they were a particularly good band. So, and I've been to see them a couple of times and they're just, it's just, I can't grab it. So, I've been fortunate that I haven't had to do that. Maybe 1 or 2 bands, but for the most part, you have to understand what's involved going in there. And I don't walk in if I think there's a weakness there that I can't fix or deal with, then usually I'll walk away from the project, and that's still true. If I hear something, people want me to do a mix on something, and if I listen to it and I don't think that it's been done well enough or something like that, then I'll just turn it down. I don't particularly need the money. I just, I try to do things that I enjoy. It's no point in me trying to do something that I don't enjoy it, because I'm not going to do a good job, and it's better off for somebody else. If I can't get enthusiastic about it, then I'm probably the wrong guy. So and it works both ways. If people send me stuff, oh, we want you to produce this, and if it doesn't grab me, I say, nah, I'm going to pass. It doesn't grab me. It's not my cup of tea. And I won't say it's crap. It just doesn't grab me, and I can't see it. If I can't see it, then there's really no point. If I can't get some kind of vision from it, and often with a lot of records, it comes down to maybe just one song, like Malice, for instance, License to Kill. That record, I didn't know what to do, but I really liked James's singing, the way he could get up to those notes. It was really good. And then they sent me Chain Gang Woman, and there's just something about that. I like the way it had just like kind of laid back intro, and then had a good tough riff, and I like the way that he staggers the vocal over the chorus, and that one made the difference for me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this record because I like this track, and then the rest of the tracks start coming into focus, and then you see a way of doing it. But if I don't see a good way of doing it, then I don't take things just for the money. It doesn't work out well, and it's just not a good thing to do, and it doesn't help the artist. It doesn't help me, and you end up with a product that is just probably not right. And much better for them to get somebody who is enthusiastic and gets into it. If I'm not into it, then usually I walk away, because unless I really need the money.
Max, I want to thank you so much. I know you're busy building the studio, long overdue. I really appreciate this. It's obviously I've been listening to your work for years. I always have a saying when I do these that it's so cool when you meet one of your heroes and they're a nice guy and not an asshole, and you definitely are a super pro.
Few stories about that too. Yeah, I've made the mistake in the past of being a fanboy, and both times I did it, it worked out like shit. So I don't, and I just like have to be blasé with people, But I see no reason to be a dick, and that's always disappointing to me. And there's a few people I met over the years that I was very disappointed in, and yeah, I don't really get it. I don't see why people would be like that, but I guess each person is different, and you do get sometimes you get people like that. But fortunately, most of the people that I know in the industry are actually pretty good, and they're actually pretty reasonable. Of course, they might be pretty good just because it's me, but most people are pretty reasonable, and with the exception of the Ingves of the world, most people are pretty decent. So I don't know. I mean, I always try and always try and give time to people, because I'm very thankful that people listened, actually, because when you're doing it at the time, you don't. First of all, you don't have much time, and secondly, you're not sure anybody's really going to hear it. Is it going to get released? Are people going to buy it? Are they going to like it? Is it going to get on the rate? All this kind of stuff. And so I'm always very, very thankful for everybody that they went out, and I've had people come up to me in crazy places and go, "Oh, I really like, the vibra slap on this, and on Black Tiger, or you know," and I'll be like, "Oh, you noticed that?" Because when you're doing it, you're hoping somebody somewhere will notice, and so 35 years later, somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, yeah, I really like that part." And I'll be like, "Thank God somebody liked it." After all this time, 30, 35 years, finally somebody said to me, "Oh, I like that part." So, you do the best you can, and you try and stay objective and as normal as possible, and realize that, you know, most people are probably better than you at everything anyway. So just shut the fuck up and do the best you can. You know what I mean?
Love it. Thank you so much, sir. You ever get to Halifax, Nova Scotia, I owe you a pint. No
Oh,
question.
Halifax?
Yes,
God, you're ways up
I
there.
am.
Well, you know what? Oh, if I get up there, I'll be certain to give you a call, because I won't know anybody else. That's for sure.
Thank you, sir. You have a great night. I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, and I appreciate yours too. And thanks for the good questions, and thanks for the listening, basically. And thanks to everybody that hears this. Thank all those people for listening too, and hopefully we can keep making good stuff and keep people enjoying things.
Peace out, sir.